Today, we are gathered here for Creative Conversations, which is a monthly, or it used to be monthly, a quarterly program where we talk about professional practices within our art practice and navigating the world as artists, but also people who have to represent ourselves and be businesses within ourselves and exist in a world of capitalism and rules. I went to Tyler. I want to talk about that in a second, but I took a professional practices class when I was there that I graduated 10 years ago. At the time that I took it, it was taught by people from the glass department who essentially only told us about how to apply for residencies and shows, but we're still teaching us how to apply on CD-ROMs. So we all, essentially our project for the semester was putting all of our artwork onto a CD-ROM and mailing it to a gallery, which in 2014, no one was doing anymore. So that was my experience in school learning about it. I know a lot of people who went to other art schools didn't even have a class talking about those things. So when we started developing this program, everyone who's involved from our staff thought about all of the questions we get all the time and have individual lessons with people on. And we were like, we should just start a program where we actually tell everyone at the same time. And then also record it so that people can send it to their friends on YouTube if they find it helpful. So anyway, I'm Sam. I don't think I said that. I know most of you, which is why I'm being more casual than I usually am. So my name's Sam. I'm the executive director of Da Vinci Art Alliance. Introduction About Our Space is we're a 93-year-old art organization founded by 16 Italian immigrants in 1931. We have existed in a lot of different ways over the last 93 years. And currently we exist as an artist collaborative focused on social justice issues of what affects people and our lives and doing programs around that. And both within here as well as out in the greater Philadelphia area. We usually host about 100 programs outside of our space and inside of 100 programs a year. And then this year we had 35 exhibitions, both here as well as 2 satellite. So that's an intro about Da Vinci and this program. So here's an intro about me. Like I said, my name is Sam. I graduated from Tyler in 2014. And this is the work that I was making when I was at Tyler. It is not what I make today, but I thought that it was kind of a good introduction of where I was while I was like leaving my program. Because at the time I was super hard-headed about what I thought the art world was and what I wanted from it and what my own practice looked like. I was really steadfast of like, I am a weaver and a sculptor and I will never do anything else other than those things. When I was in school, I took a silkscreening class and a dye class because I was like, this seems like I'll make money from it maybe one day. And then I took it and hated it. And then thought I was going to hate leaving and then fell in love with leaving. So that's kind of like where I was. And I was working retail at the time. And that was my whole plan for my life was I am just going to work retail and make enough money to have my studio practice and just be an artist. And then hi, Leah. About 6 months after I graduated, my program head, Jessie Herod, reached out to me that this lovely lady, who is one of my favorite people now, she was a stranger to me 10 years ago, Diane Rico, was looking for a studio assistant. And I had absolutely no idea how to do any of the work that she does. She is a dye artist and a printmaker, and both of those things were things that terrified me when I was in school, and I didn't like them. And I just started working for it because I was like, well, this is more interesting than retail. And then I fell in love with Diane and apprenticed under her for 8 years before I worked here, which the reason I'm bringing this up is it will all circle back later at the end of my but working for Diane brought me so many opportunities that I had never expected. Because like I said, my whole outset about the world was just like working to survive and have my practice. And I had never thought about integrating art into my daily life outside of my own studio space. And through working with Diane, and then, well, sorry, I do have an agenda. I know I seem all over the place, but I just love her and it makes me loopy. So I was working for Diane. I was learning a lot about dye and printmaking and silk screening and all of these things that I had no interest in school. And then at the time I was an alcoholic and I was hanging out at this bar around the corner from here all the time. And there was this other person who also was hanging out at the bar all the time. And they randomly came up to me one day and they were like, "You're an artist, right? I am the assistant director at a gallery and we need help with install. Like, do you think you can do that?" I was like, "I don't know, probably." So then I met Caroline Lakensteifel. So this was part of the exhibition that we installed for her at the Leonard Pearlstein Gallery. And my friend is Leah Appleton, who is wonderful, who introduced us. And through Caroline, I had worked within student galleries, both at Moore and at Tyler, and like installed my pizza show, curated another show there. But I've never really been in a professional setting before for installation. And through that, it opened up my mind of what artist assistant work could be. And also like through my previous and ongoing work with Diane. And then about a year after I helped her with the install, we had kept in contact and she got selected to lead a workshop at Haystack, which is a craft school up in Maine. And she reached out to me to be her teaching assistant for that, which was awesome. Because I'm really interested in natural dyes and pigment, which developed as I was working for Diane. And Caroline is also really interested in those things, but didn't have the experience with them herself. So we basically split that. I think it was a 2-week workshop. We split up that time that she would be teaching about assemblage and using. She's a kindergarten teacher, so she uses a lot of pipe cleaners and construction paper and like random materials that you wouldn't expect in fine art practice to like build these structures. So she was teaching that end of it, and then I was teaching about sewing and natural pigments and dyeing. And it was the first time I worked in collaboration in that way with an artist. And I think it just kind of set me on that path of like moving into this field of like collective making, collective care, and a way that I was also doing with, hey, Julia, in other parts of my life. So then in 2017, I joined Da Vinci in the space that we're all in right now, unless you're watching this later on YouTube. And the space was really, really different at the time that I joined. There was about 40 members. Most of them were above the age of 60 and didn't live in Philly. Most of them lived on the main line or in other parts of the greater Philadelphia region. And it was 1 year after we got our first paid staff person. So we were in this transition period that was really exciting to join, where the board at the time was looking at what was going on around Philly and the work that they were interested in showing and the voices that they were interested in having in the space, and realizing that the way that they had been functioning for the last like 85 or so years wasn't conducive thank you, to the goals that they had. So I was the youngest member at the time. I think I was 24 when I joined, and I got asked to join the exhibitions committee, which we always half joke is our secondary board, because the exhibitions committee has, I guess, control over the entire gallery. They're the ones that select all the shows. They also give us thoughts and opinions about programming, our fellowship. The fellowship program is actually built by the exhibition committee. So I was the co-chair after a year, 6 months of serving on it. And me and my co-chair, John Cron, worked really closely with our executive director and gallery director at the time to build out the fellowship program. So we could support more artists in the space that didn't have the same amount of resources that the people currently in the space had. So that has grown and developed and been shaped a lot over the last 8 years. And now we also have the fellowship half of our program, or residency half of our fellowship program, which is new since 2021. So this was my first, I guess, like dive into working like really in collaboration with like a lot of people, and also seeing the other end of the application cycle. So it gave me a greater insight of how do we actually use language to describe what our intent is. Because I think as artists, we don't talk about it a lot. Like, well, even during critiques, I feel like I'm in a lot of critiques where people are referencing other artists, where they'll be like, oh, this reminds me of so-and-so, or like, why did you do that shape? But we're not really thinking about how we describe that to other people within an application, or how people who have no idea who you are will care about the things that you're doing. So, and I think because I was new to the gallery and the committee, everyone else on the committee knew these people. So they could submit an application that was like, I have 5 paintings and I want to show them. And people would be like, yeah. And I was like, but why? Like, I don't know who this is. Why do they just deserve a show because they have 5 pieces they want to show? So anyway, it still functions in this way, but we have a lot of different parameters now. And you have to actually answer questions and not to say the 5 words. Anyway, not to get too in the weeds about all this. So Diane Rico is married to Richard Rico. So about a year-ish after I started working for Diane, Richard needed an assistant because his assistant got married and moved away. So then I started working for Richard, who is a professor. Well, he's a professor emeritus now, but at the time I worked for him, he worked for Temple. He was the head of the printmaking department at Tyler, and he essentially needed help managing his entire studio because he was so in the weeds with work that he didn't actually have time to submit applications to shows or grants or all the things that he's required. All of the teachers that are tenured are required to do in order to get raises and keep their jobs. So he started hiring assistants in order to make his studio practice still, I guess, not viable, but active. So that was really where I got thrown in of places that I was not prepared for, because I had to start researching opportunities that fit into printmaking, which is not, at the time, I had no idea who was even showing prints or how any of these processes were made, or I guess any of the prints, how they were made with processes. And he wanted me to write grant applications for him. I was writing stuff for Temple, but I was like, I'm not a professor and I've never been taught writing. I don't know what to do. So for the first year I worked for him, he had me write everything and then look over my shoulder and would just correct things to be able to write in the way that he would write. And it helped me figure out, as you can tell from all my rambling, I am a rambler, and that is also represented in how I write. So it really started making things more succinct on paper for me. You don't have to go into like this diatribe of every feeling and every emotion that gets brought up, or like I make work about gentrification and because I think it leaves out people. I think the conversation around it a lot of the time leaves out the people affected, both people coming in as well as people getting pushed out. And I am really angry about it all the time. But if I was going to put that onto paper, it would be like a manifesto, like 1 million pages long. So how can I wrap that manifesto up into like 3 sentences? So working for Richard was great. And then that led me to working for a couple more artists. So these are the ones that I regularly work with. There's a handful of other people that I don't work with as often, but I randomly pick up work with them. This is a creepy image. So Cynthia photographs me. That's basically how I work for her. And she's a weird fiber artist that photographs me and then makes some really scary sculptures out of it. So that's I'm going to see her after this to probably get photographed again. Artist assistant work can look like a lot of different things, including having scary things made out of your body. Anyway, the whole reason I'm talking about all of this is because I think it really put into perspective for me all of the different ways that artists make and work and talk about their art and their intent behind why they do the things they do. So like Richard was the head of printmaking, and Richard's ideology around how to get raises and how to apply to things is get into as many shows as possible, because how can they deny me a raise if I'm still this active? Whereas Anzi is the current head of printmaking, and Anzi's perspective is more like, I don't want to be in a million shows because that means I constantly have to be shipping artwork and keeping track of things, and I don't have time to do that. So let's make the things that you're applying for really significant. So I can still get that raise, but I don't need to be spending the entire year shipping 50 pieces around the world. And then Michael, I started working for him. He had stopped making art for 20 years because he had a kid, and his, I'm laughing because I know his wife too. His wife made him get a job because she was like, I have a kid, I am pregnant, and you need to take care of me. So then when Lewis, his son, was like 15, he was allowed to have a studio practice again. So if you've ever been to the Crane Arts building, and catty corner to the Crane is now the Ray, which is the giant red building. The weird cement building to the left of that is now Michael's art studio. So he is wonderful, and you should go visit him. But anyway, his perspective when I started working for him was just like, I used to be represented by galleries. I don't know how to even connect to galleries anymore. And so how do I start getting my work out into the world again? So for him, I just kind of did the same type of work that I did for Richard, that I just started mass applying to places that fit his style so he could start building out his CV again. And now that he has that, he started scaling back on applying because he's getting invited into exhibitions. So anyway, now I work here. So all of those years of working for other artists and working collaboratively on the exhibitions committee here and in other spaces made me realize that what I had thought about my own practice, where I thought it was going to be really rooted in isolation and me just working in my studio surviving, was totally not me, reflective of who I am at all. And I am really passionate about connecting artists to resources and giving them a platform to actually tell their stories, and host workshops like this to teach you how to do the things, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there of how to get seen and how to get help. And I keep saying the word resources, but yeah, resources, and also how to connect. Like, it's really important to me as the executive director here that there's always some aspect of community practice within all of the work or all of the exhibitions that we show here, because we don't exist in isolation as artists, and inviting other people into the spaces we've created so that they also feel at home and can connect to your work, and vice versa, that we can learn from them, I think is how we actually build real community care. And yeah, so then that's why I started working here. So I want to talk about personal intent really quick, and then I'm going to stop talking about me mostly. So everyone has their own reasons for why they do the things that they do. And just like I was saying with Anzi and Richard being in the same exact positions, but having completely different reasons and I guess like ideologies of how they do their applications, I also feel that way. So there is a, I guess, philosophy of applying to opportunities that I vehemently disagree with, which is that you should apply for every single thing that you see. Because what you're going to end up doing is getting a million no's. You're going to feel like shit about yourself. And you're probably going to waste thousands of dollars every year because almost every single opportunity that you see has an application fee attached to it. Like I have a friend who sent in over 500 applications between art opportunities and jobs last year. And I cannot even fathom how she has the time or the money to do that. Because it takes so much time to build applications, especially when you add in grant applications, because those can take like a week to write. So, right, I think it's really important for us to think of ourselves and like holistically in our lives. Like, what is our time that we have available? Just like Andy was saying that he doesn't have the time to be shipping things around. I personally don't have time to do that either. So I don't really apply for opportunities anymore outside of residencies because I need the space for like 2 weeks to just sit and sleep and think that I don't have access to in Philly anymore. And that is kind of where my brain is at in this moment in time. I was talking to my friend about this the other day, who also runs the gallery, and we were both saying, like, for us, in where we are with our practice, like, we haven't been applying to open calls for like giant group shows, because for me now as a curator, I don't feel like you get enough perspective of each person's work when you only see one piece. And like Janine, who's next to Daniel right now, I know a lot. Anyway, my partner curated this show, so I know all of the artists pretty well. But Janine is a wood turner, and most of the objects she makes are like giant vessels or like really intimate vessels. And I would have no idea that from her one piece without looking into her. And which I think is also very cool that she submitted something that's not like her normal work into this show. But I think I'm more interested in shows that you get like at least like 3 pieces by a person. So you can start getting like a dialogue of the work and get a better understanding of that person. So that realizing that through working here, it's changed how I apply to opportunities for myself. And that's also for me. That has nothing to do with you guys. And I've also been in a lot of group shows where I had one tiny little piece and I was still happy about that. But yeah, the time involved, I think, has really changed my perspective. So the reason why you all have tiny little yellow cards, which if you already started writing on it, we can give you more, is because you're going to think about your intent. So some of the examples that I put on here, I'm just going to read this because YouTube can't see my screen. So what drives you to apply for opportunities? Take 5 minutes to think about what your intent is from applying to opportunities. Some thoughts could include, do you want to show your work to a larger audience? Do you want to connect to other people who share the same interests as you? What do you need out of your studio practice right now? Do you need a change of scenery? Like, I know for me, that is why I applied for so many residencies, because I need to get the hell out of here. Because I'll say I love Philly, but I need a break like once a year. If you got a grant, what amount of money would you need to do the things you want to do in your practice? So thinking critically about like, what does your rent, if you have a studio, what is your rent every year? If you don't have a studio, if you got a grant, could you budget for that? If you work, like my partner, Colin, he got a grant a couple of years ago, to put in, he's a woodworker, and he had to put in a different filtration system in our basement so that you didn't get black lung. If you inhale too much sawdust, or like as a fiber artist, you can also get black lung if you are weaving or doing textile work because of all the microfibers that you inhale. So that has nothing to do with this, but that's important information to have. You should wear respirators when you do work, even if you think you don't need to. But yeah, so Colin needed better equipment for his studio so that he wouldn't get sick. And he was able to, there are grants out there. I'm going to give you a resource list after this. There's one that's really good for stuff like that on here. Is there a type of craft you want to explore but haven't had the opportunity to drive into it yet? So like the Women's Studio Workshop is a printmaking studio. And I know a lot of people who've never done printmaking before who go there. There's clay spaces that you can learn about working with clay. Kind of colony. One of his dream residencies is there is like a toilet manufacturer that invites artists in to use like the glazes and the porcelain to make art. It's not Bemis. No. Bemis is a good residency though. What do you have time for within your practice? How can applications / what you're applying for be streamlined to fit into your schedule? So anyway, I'm gonna set a timer. No, I'm not, because my phone is recording this right now. Veronica's setting a timer for 5 minutes. So take some time, think critically about your life. Where are you? Where are you? Sharper now? Oh, also, I said this before, a lot of people were here. We don't normally have a giant movie screen for this. We just had a movie screening last night and I was lazy and I was like, we don't have to take it down today. We can do it tomorrow. Which also means we have a lot of popcorn and candy. So if anyone wants food, go take it. No, actually, we can have fun. No, and if this brings up questions while you guys are writing, you could ask them too. Yeah, it's really open to going on a little bit of a detour. So Friday, how much time is left?
One minute and 1 second. Now it's gonna be an exciting.
You can get more than one, Ron, if not follow me. We'll be,
You can start with one, but then I can always get that.
Okay, so as we start wrapping up, the reason why I'm having you guys think about this is because I think it's good, but also it's going to help you develop what I'm about to talk about. So what we're moving into is strategies for finding opportunities. Now that you've heard me rant about myself for 30 minutes. So I started thinking about this a lot when I was working for all these like zillion artists that I've worked with over the years, because each one of them has a different intent for applying to things. Like Diane is very focused on being in the fiber community, applying to those types of opportunities. Whereas, Richard and Amzi are more within printmaking, but also Amzi is, I would say, a sculptor. So he goes between spaces. Michael is painting, Cynthia is doing scary things. So within that, I started realizing I had to keep track of gallery spaces and opportunities in different systems for each artist because they weren't applying to the same things. And I had to kind of rewire my brain for each person, just like I had to do for writing in their voice. I also had to do when I was thinking critically about what places I was looking at for them for applying for things. So that led me down the path of creating a database system for them that was super like low tech. I started out with a binder, and every time I saw an opportunity that fit one of my clients, and then eventually myself, because I started seeing stuff that I was like, "Ooh, that seems like me." I would have different tabs in the binder for the person that I was applying for, and then that started changing because like Richard wanted to start applying for residencies and grants, or I wasn't working for him the other time. Diane does a lot of traveling to different symposiums and things. So it just started getting like too thick for the binder because I bike and I don't want to carry all that shit. So I transitioned over to a Google Doc where I just had a giant running list of everything I could find for each person. And then once I became comfortable with spreadsheets, I was like, oh, this is supposed to be a spreadsheet thing. So now after working here, I transitioned over to Airtable, which is 100% what I would recommend to every single person. We collectively are Airtable enthusiasts, and we'll preach about them to everyone who talks to us about spreadsheets or data tracking or artwork inventories. And I will show you why. Let me make sure I have my computer free. So this is what I started with. This makes me want to be happy. So I just had this very long document. This is the one for myself. I would have one for each person. So at the top, I would have all the information for upcoming stuff. Obviously, I've not updated this in a while because I am an Airtable enthusiast now. But I would keep track of like places I was waiting to hear back from, places I was accepted to. And then I think I kept a different document for rejections. Because I think you should keep track of rejections. And part of that is because you get to see how much you've grown over the years. Because sometimes you'll apply to a place you got rejected from, and then you get like an award or you finally get it. And I think it's just good for you to see the progress you've made within yourself. If I'm being a little woo-woo, but also I think it helps us think critically about the things that we're applying to. Like there are definitely things that I applied to that looking back, I'm like, why is that? Like they don't show art like mine. Like why did I even think that I would get accepted? And I paid like a $50 application to apply to that. So I think it gives us perspective in a lot of different ways. So anyway, started here. And then this is not my spreadsheet, this is someone else's spreadsheet, but essentially this is how I started keeping track of data. So in addition to the database systems, there are a zillion websites out in the world that post opportunity lists. So this is a database not to keep track of applications, but to keep track of places where you can find applications, or I guess open calls. So this woman, like this is a tab called network. So it's different Facebook groups or websites that just have like a zillion open calls on them. So you can scroll through. A lot of the time you can categorize it like by photography or painting, whatever the open call is looking for. And then she also has like opportunities listings, like publications, conferences, things like that. And then eventually it led me to here. So this is my spreadsheet. So Airtable, like I said, is a really smart database system. So this is my personal inventory as well as like opportunity listings. This is Amzi's, Richard's, Michael. And in Amzi's, I keep track of opportunities he's interested in. I don't keep track of that in my spreadsheet because he's looking at different places that I'm looking at because we have different practices. So within mine, I have a couple different tabs. So I'll start with this one. I curated a show over the summer around the corner of Partners and Son. So this is like the inventory list for my friend's work that I curated. And then there's different views. So I can see it both as a spreadsheet to be able to send to the exhibition space, but also as like a gallery view. So I can quickly look at it and see, not that, I clicked by accident. Like the work at a glance if I had a question about something. Anyway, there's a lot of reasons why Airtable is great. This is one of them. So I have the same thing for my own artwork inventory. I keep track of everything within here now. I used to keep track of everything within like folder systems on my computer. I would just like have all the photos and in the title of the folder, I was like name, title, year, medium, price. And that is really annoying when you're applying to shows. So with the spreadsheet, just copy and paste. And it's the same thing, but I can look at the gallery view and be like, cool. So one of the reasons why I really like Airtable and why I'm talking to you about it today is because you can tag things. So let's say that this application that I want to apply to, I go over to the application and I add a record here of artwork submitted. And I can look at all the artwork and just click on the one that I submitted to that call. So if this was an exhibition instead of a residency, I would have a running list of, oh, I only have one of this piece, but I applied to 3 shows. So if it got into all 3, I would be screwed. So I like don't accidentally like overbook myself. And it also helps you keep record of where things have been, like how many times it's been shown. If you can tell me like a little bit type A when it comes to all of this stuff, because I think it's good to have a record of your life. What are you squinting at?
I just can't see. So
Oh, okay. So I like to keep track of like if it's a grant, if it's a curated exhibition, if it's an open call, like what it is, because sometimes I look at my CV and I'm like, I do not remember ever doing this. Did I actually send my work? So anyway, also within this, I keep track of everything. So in the all view, you'll see this is a very, very long list. but I have it broken down into basically the same thing as the spreadsheet I showed you earlier, where it's broken down by networks, opportunity listings, publications, etc. I have the same thing on the side here, where I can look at the call for entry list. So one of the ones that I really, really, really like, if you can't tell from my notes, I say best group is one on Facebook. I should have it's in Safari because I'm not logged into anything and now I don't know. So Art Opportunities and Advice is a New York-based group that serves an international audience. And it both has opportunities, but also, like I said, advice and jobs. And it is one of the greatest places, in my opinion, to get information. So like sometimes we'll get a spam email that's like, oh, my wife and I are having an anniversary and we like your work. And can you have me buy all of it? This is a real spam email. And you can copy and paste that and like put it into the search bar here. And most likely like 8 people already sent it to the group to be like, is this a scam? So in general, I just think this is a great group. But it's also a lot of other opportunity lists have a lot of kind of scammy open calls. So this is my personal opinion. I have no judgment for people who do it because we all want to, get our work out there. But there's a lot of open calls that are asking for you to pay like $35 to have a photo of your work on Instagram. And I think those are scams, and a lot of these open call website or pretty much everything that exists. They post them in those spaces. So whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or on like a more professional open call site, like Call for Entry, you're going to run across those things. And that's why I was talking about thinking critically of not applying to everything that you see, because like it doesn't just to fill a CV line to make it seem like you've been in a lot of shows in a year. If someone is critically looking at your CV and they see that most of the shows you were in were paying like $50 to be on a website, it doesn't look great. So it's a shame, which is part of the reason I wanted to teach this, because I think more people should know that those things suck. But Art Opportunities and Advice are full of people like me that hate those things. And when those get posted, you'll see like 20 comments of people just being like, how dare you post this here? This is a scam. So it's more all over the place, but it is usually more professional and is one of the first places I go to when I'm looking for things to apply to, which is why I wanted to clean it out. So essentially why I'm showing you all of these things is because we all have our own learning styles and ways of organizing ourselves. Me being very type A and needing everything to be in a smart spreadsheet might not work for other people. And I will also say that this looks really good today because I spent like 4 hours the other day updating this because I hadn't touched it in like a year, and there were links that were broken in it. And things that were not organized in the way that I wanted to. My artwork inventory was not in this up until a couple of days ago because I had the intent of doing it, but I've been so busy at work I hadn't done it. So I am less organized than right now I look. But I do believe in systems like this because it helps you be faster with your own practice so that you're not having to spend so much time applying to things, because you don't have to hand write out your artwork title and medium and name, like price and everything, because you can copy and paste it. You don't have to keep track of deadlines like all over the place in like your pile of Post-it notes on your desk, because you have it in one place that you can just bookmark the link. And one of the last thing I will say to promote Airtable, we do not get paid by them. We pay them. This is free. So the one that we use for work, which has a lot of storage space, we do pay for. This I do not pay for. So they give you like I think like 8 gigabytes or something of free space, when you sign up. It might be less than that now because they recently changed some stuff, but like a good amount of space to have an inventory and your own opportunity list. And one of the things that I love about it is you can set up automations. So part of the reason, other than like keeping track of things, that I have the deadline here is because I set up an automation that 2 weeks out from that deadline, Airtable will email me to be like, did you forget about this? Unless I already said that I applied, and then it won't. But if it still says need to apply, Airtel will be like, girl, what are you doing? You haven't been working on this, have you? And then it emails me again 2 days out, and then the day of the deadline, with a reminder of the time. And so, I passionately believe in this system because my brain is all over the place all the time, and it is the only thing that keeps me from forgetting that I also am an artist as well as a art professional. So like I said, we all have our own systems. I think it's important to start developing your own system. And the other reason why I wanted to show you this is in my big boy opportunity list. I have everything broken down into these places because those are the things I'm interested in. So like for exhibitions and galleries, I don't have as many right now. Like these are the exhibition or the gallery spaces that I keep track of because eventually I want to show work there. And I don't want to forget that, but I don't necessarily want to be applying to shows right now because I'm in a transitionary period in my practice. But I'm really interested in doing residencies, and that's where a lot of my practice has shifted over the last 6 or 7 years. So I have a large database of 40 residencies that every single one of them, there is a reason, like a specific reason of why that one is calling out to me. And, you know, not everything is due right now, or like it doesn't have their application period open. So like some of the ones that I was looking at the other day to make sure they were still relevant. Well, I was showing those to you guys. Like they say, oh, we're closed right now, but we'll be opening up applications in December or in the spring. And I keep track of those in my deadline seasons, which is very similar to what I do for grant writing for this job. So essentially this spreadsheet is almost the exact same spreadsheet that I use for DaVinci, except that's all focused around grants and fundraising. So like let's say the Leeway Foundation, which does not give grants to organizations, but it does give grants to artists. Their application season is always in August. I'll put summer on that. So I can filter this and say, I only want to see summer. And then only the summer stuff will come up. And that will kind of give me a heads up for like, what are the things I need to prepare for myself for this season to have applications ready, or like work finished in time to apply. Anyway, sorry, I could talk about this for a very long time. I feel like I'm going on a tangent. Okay, so this is one strategy, is basically keeping a lot of links and finding time in your schedule to go through a million links. Most of these opportunities, not this because of the residencies, the call for entry list, most of these are one-off opportunities of getting into a group show, getting into a 1 to 3 person show, or applying to have an exhibition, like a curatorial proposal in a space. That is most likely what you're going to find on these websites. Also, some of them are specifically for residencies too. So if that's something you're interested in, there are Facebook groups or other websites that are focused more on like grants for residencies, but usually it's just open calls. It takes so much time to do this. I literally had this as a career for like 7 years. That 3 days a week I was sitting in front of a computer just scrolling through hashtags and websites and Facebook groups trying to find like one thing that my boss would be happy with. And that made me realize, because social media and the internet is changing a lot. A lot of the spaces that I used to look at don't exist anymore. People got tired of Facebook. People aren't on Facebook. Instagram is a bitch to find opportunities on unless you're directly following spaces. So, like, I know that TSA, like Tiger Strikes Asteroid, has an open call right now. I don't think that I might be wrong, but I do not think, because I scrolled through the hashtag the other day when I was writing this, I don't think that they use like the open or like call for art hashtag. So if you're looking at that hashtag, it's not going to come up. So you have to follow their Instagram in order to know when they have opportunities, which is why starting a database, or like, I've never done this, but I've thought about doing this before, having like a ghost Instagram that like literally just exists to follow spaces you're interested in showing work at, so that you can just like quickly scroll through it and see if anyone's doing anything. Yeah, a lot of different ways we can do things. So one of the ones that I started doing is looking at artists that I really like their CVs. So, or their Instagram to see other places that they've shown their work. And there's like different methods in my madness with that. So I'm going to show you 3 artists that I like. Oh, I forgot to put this up. So this is the call for art hashtag on Instagram. So you kind of just scroll through it and see, and one of the things about this too is like things will come up that like you just can't do. Like I was looking at this one yesterday because I was like, oh, exhibition proposals. I curate shows. Maybe I will submit a proposal. And then when I started reading it, I was like, oh, you have to be in New England to do it. So you have to think also critically about the places that you're interested in working with. Like there's a lot of places on the West Coast that I'm like, would be very cool, but they only show artists within their sphere, which I also think is fair. But even if I follow them for 10 years, they're not going to randomly give me a show just because I like what they're doing. You still follow them. But I think being realistic too, like we get applications, our fellowship and residency program is specifically for Greater Philadelphia and artists, because we don't think there's enough opportunities for artists here. And we get people from like Europe applying for it every year. And I'm like, we have it as a requirement. You just didn't read. And that's what I mean by people mass applying. It's like, there's no strategy. And it's wrong. So anyway, this is an artist I really like. Her work is not similar to my work at all. I think Veronica also likes her because she follows her too. So Melissa makes textile work. A lot of it is made on knitting machines. And I just think the texture she uses in her work and the abstract shapes and way of hanging that is unusual is really appealing to me, both as an artist as well as a curator, to think about how we hang things differently. And I look at her Instagram like every couple of months to just be like, what is she up to? And then through that, I found like other spaces that she's had work in, that when I go to their Instagrams, I'm like, holy shit, they're showing other cool artists that I want to follow. I think we can use Instagram and like maybe internet, but specifically Instagram with people who use it as like artist portfolios or like diaries, as like a point of discovery for ourselves of like, yeah, we might find exhibition spaces, but we also might find artists we like I had Danielle Deegan Rhodes curated me into a 2-person show at Automat a couple years ago. And the other half of the two was my friend Cynthia Reynolds that I met through the internet. And then I introduced Danielle to her, and none of us had ever met in person. I just found her on a random Instagram one day and then ended up having a show with her in Philly. And she is a close friend now, and I like go out to New York to visit with her. And I think these relationships that we can build with people, all of the people that I'm about to show you, I am not friends with. I just admire from afar. But yeah, like I said, using it as a point of discovery of ourselves as well as other people and how we can move about space. So yeah, Melissa also does have her CV online. So that's what I mean by like you can look through other people's stuff. And I think it also helps you be realistic about your own practice sometimes. Like there are artists that I think are really cool and doing awesome things. And I'm like, I could do what they're doing. And then I see their CV and I'm like, you have only been showing at museums, that I am not a museum artist yet. So then this is Emma Snaft, who works with fiber and wood. And I think her work is really interesting because I am rooted in fiber practices and dating a woodworker, and her work is similar to both of our practices. And I just really like looking at it to see kind of these like dualities of just like shape and form and how it comes up for other people in a similar way of like me and Colin thinking about things. So like this is not relevant to most of you because you probably don't know Colin's work, but Colin did basically the same piece for a show that he did a couple years ago. And I did essentially this piece for a show I did a couple of years ago. And I just think it's really fun to find artists that are doing similar work to yours and being like, what are your thoughts? Why are you doing these things? Where are you showing your work? And starting to create like your own like resource library basically of like people that you think are really cool. Like going back to Diane, my old boss, she has this perspective called artist ancestors, where it's artists that you essentially really vibe with, and creating like a catalog of artists that you find like inspiration from, but also can like feed off of. And like I mean, yeah, it's great to look at dead artists in that way, but I think rather than just thinking about ancestors, also thinking about people who are alive today that are resonating with you and building connections that way too. So that's how I feel about Emma. But Emma doesn't have a CV on her website. No. So Emma just has like her artist bio and statement, which is great. But if you're like trying to like mooch off with someone to figure out where they're showing work so that you can also try and show work with places, you can go back to Instagram most of the time. And Emma posts on her main a lot places that she is showing at. But usually you can find it within their tagged photos too if you're not finding it on their main feed of like most likely if you run a show, especially with a solo show or something, you're going to get tagged if you're on Instagram. So, and then this is Caitlin Pomerantz, and I really like their work. So Caitlin, I do not know, but is Philly based and runs this really awesome program at Penn called Matters, where they investigate how things are made. And it is so intriguing to me. So I just am like a very big fan person of Caitlin's work. And constantly I'm looking at their Instagram to see what they're up to. And I think it's made me rethink my own practice of like how we can both be working on the things that we care about and we're thinking about all the time and bring that into community and like working in partnership, both with like institutions, but also outside of institutions, and like within publications and things. So, and then also you can look at Caitlin's website also has their CV. So if you want to look through that. Anyway, I wanted to give three because I couldn't decide which of the three I was going to only talk about. So I'm running my foot slides real quick. No, I'm not. Where am I? Oh, I wanted to talk about networking, which I know is like a gross word for a lot of people, but also is what we're literally all doing all the time, and you're probably going to do right after I finish this, unless you're really shy and you run out of here. So I think part of the reason why I don't apply to open calls as much as I used to is also because time. I run this space and never have a day off, and I don't really have time to be in shows. But also, I have a lot more connections through meeting a million people all the time through this job. So I am more focused on curating right now. And I'm really like I really like the like meatiness of like people's process. And like I was just talking to Julie about this the other day. Like bringing it to more people. And I'm saying this because all of the people that I've curated are, wait, did I actually do this right? Okay, yes, I think this is what I meant to do. So all of the people that I've curated over the last couple of years are people that, oh, are you interrupting me? Are people that I feel really connected to. Where is my, oh, I doubled up this way. I meant to do this all on like one slide, not two separate ones. So this is Carmel, this is Fuji, this is an entire collective of people. I'm not going to name all of them right now. So there's the Philly Dye Club. These are two exhibitions that I curated this year that came out of personal relationships that I have with those people. And it just kind of happened. So the show I did with Suji and Carmel was because I'm also friends with Tom and Gina, who run Partners and Son, which is where the exhibition was held. And last summer after an opening, I was like, yeah, Carmel's been working on this clock that like has water in it. And I just want to force them to actually finish it. So I need to figure out how to get an exhibition space. And Tom was like, oh, you can do that here. I want to see that too. So that literally was not me applying for an opportunity. It was talking to my friend who was drunk at an opening and then following up the next day with his wife to make sure it happened. And then like Philly Dye Club are Laura Rico, who is Diana Richards' daughter, who I became really close with through working for her parents for so long. And when she had her first baby a couple of years ago during COVID, she wanted to continue doing art, but didn't have a lot of resources and wanted because, and also she was home with during COVID. And she remembered when she was in grad school working with natural dyes and really finding a connection to it. And now she is like a badass natural dyer that started out with just doing avocado pit dyes in her home kitchen. Now she has like a whole studio space. She's teaching workshops all over the city, connected to Cindy Stockton Moore and Miriam and the rest of the Philly Dye Club. She brought in Kate, who's taught for us before and is like one of the most badass dyers I've ever met. Anyway, they're all just like researchers that are like I don't want to curse, effing around with like figuring out materiality in so many different ways. And through Laura, I like connected to the rest of them. And it was just so impactful for me, like attending one silly dice club meeting that I was like, I need to have an exhibition of this because more people need to see the process and the community aspect of this space. Even if they like can't physically attend a meeting, like having like a month of people being able to connect to hopefully that like feeling of community and like familyness that they've built together. They also like almost all of them have kids, so the kids are just like running around and they have a potluck at the same time that they're like naturally dying in someone's garage with like paste that they found in like a 200-year-old dye book. They're all like witches. It's like wild. Anyway, so this all happened like happenstance. And I think connections are really important because like I only met Carmel because when they were as let's see, when they were in grad school at Tyler, when their thesis came up, they reached out to me and Bryant, who used to be the co-director here, and were like, I really like your gallery and I want you to see my work. And I was like, well, I just got my COVID booster, so that's not happening, but I like your work and I want to hang out with you. So then we got coffee and now we're best friends. And I do really love their work and find it so, this is probably why we're best friends. It stimulates my brain in a way that I find like so fun. And when Tom and Gina allowed me to do this exhibition in their space, we really wanted to have it be a two-person exhibition. I was thinking a lot about like who is working in a similar way to Carmel. And Suji used to work at Da Vinci. And now we're close friends, but we stayed connected over the years, even when we weren't like I was her boss. I did one studio visit with her and I was just like, oh, this is it. Because like the way that her brain works is so similar to Carmel's, even though their work is completely different. Anyway, so now I'm rambling again, but I think this is the advice I give every time an undergrad class comes here or like younger people ask me for advice. It's just like, go get coffee with people, make people feel special and seen and heard. Because most of us, I'm looking at Gerard and Veronica. Most of us are in offices all day on a computer or like running around doing things we don't want to be doing. So when people reach out to us and are like, wow, I really like the things you do. Can you come give me advice? Or can you come look at this show that I did? I want to talk to you about things that you like. That feels really impactful and different than someone just coming up to you at an opening when you're already busy and running around doing a million things and then just standing this close to you being like, look at my work, look at this photo of my work in my hand right now. Or sometimes physically bringing their art to an opening and being like, this is my art. Do you want to hang it in this show that we're in the opening of right now? So I think being respectful and also making people feel special is, for me at this point of my life and doing this work, the biggest advice I have to people when it comes to applying for things, for finding opportunities. And this is the one I want to go back to. So, like I was talking about earlier, I love residencies. I wish I could be at a residency every day of my life. I love traveling. I love meeting new people. I don't want to go to grad school. I just want to meet a billion people all over the world. And my reasoning for that is I have met so many special to me people at residency spaces that I was not expecting at all. When I got my first residency, it was in France and I was terrified. I like went alone and like the first couple of days just like locked myself in a room, like painting. I also don't paint, so I don't know why I only brought canvases with me. And like towards the end of the residency, I made friends with this, well, there was a Ukrainian woman there and a Russian woman there. This was like 10 years ago. This was prior to what's going on right now, but there was already like tension. I don't know that much history around that situation. There was already tension happening. It was under Trump's presidency. There was stuff happening when I was there. And we just like talked a lot about like interpersonal feelings and like Russian people's opinion of Americans and like where you would be safe if you like traveled in these spaces. And then I'm still friends with Katerina, who's the Ukrainian woman. And when like the war started a couple years ago, 2 years ago? Is that 2 years? 3? Okay, thank you. You know, I was like, she was really like posting a lot on Instagram and like making sure people knew what was going on with her. And it's just not something like, and we were talking, and it's just not something I expected out of a residency, was like being able to stay connected to people like all around the world, and like uh having that like closeness with people who are going through different horrible things and the horrible things we're going through, and also wonderful things. So one of the wonderful things is this is Stable Project, which you will hear me talk about all the time if you ever talk to me about residencies. Stable is in Vermont, and it is both a performance space as well as an art space and an herbalist space. And Sophie Rose Seymour was the residency director there when I applied, and I got in, and then we lived together for a month in the woods, she was sleeping in a hammock, I was sleeping in a tent. It was 5 of us. It was very intimate. We all knew a lot about each other by the end of the month, more than any of us probably wanted to know. And then we all went our own separate ways. And Sophie is originally from Cheltenham, and moved back during COVID, and we stayed connected, and she wanted to get more connected to artists in the city and applied for our fellowship program last year and just had her fellowship exhibition last month. So I think that these are like 2 examples that are kind of all over the place of there is such like a special connection and bond that you gain with people through residencies that also leads to opportunities, whether it's like just direct connection to other things happening in the world, but also like I guess I got an opportunity from Sophie sight unseen, like, you know, as strangers. And then when Sophie came back to Philly, I was able to reintroduce her to all these different art spaces that I'm connected to. And then eventually getting her application approved here. So I think there is this like duality of like, we're all in a reciprocal relationship with all of the rest of the people we connect to, that I think is the other end of networking that we don't talk about enough, of what we can give back. Because it's not just about putting your cell phone photo of your artwork in front of someone's face and hoping they'll give you a show. It's more about like, how do we actually build relationships with people and connect to them as humans that can lead to other opportunities like jobs or shows or residencies or whatever. Am I forgetting anything? Oh, one of the things I want to say is there is, like I was talking about earlier with TSA having the open call right now, Fjord, Automat, Tiger Circus Asteroid, other spaces in the city that I can't think of right now. Vox Populi, they all have open calls for their collectives, usually once a year. Usually it's only like 2 or 3 artists that get in. Before I was connected to these spaces and I was just like an artist applying to things, I thought that was a crapshoot and I never applied to it because it felt like a waste of money. And now that I actually know people in those collectives, I reverse everything I just said. Because a lot of their curators look at that open call to see artists that they're not already don't know. So a lot of the exhibitions get further developed by people that they see in that open call. So you might not get into the 2 or 3 person show or the solo show, but now your work is in front of people that are thinking critically about contemporary art. And maybe they won't bring you into, maybe they're like Kelsey Luster used to be at Vox Populi, but now they're the gallery director? Is that Chelsea's title? Maybe gallery director? Yeah, like what is the actual title? What's the last? Chelsea Lobster. Like, is it exhibitions director or gallery director? They do all the exhibitions. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So yeah, Chelsea was a fellow here. They were a collective member at Vox. They've done work all over the city. They were a CIFA fellow. But now they are the exhibitions manager at Magic Gardens. And Chelsea has told me before, like, they still think about things that they saw in other spaces and bring that into their curatorial practice in the spaces they're working in now. So it might not be this year that when you applied, you didn't get in and then you might get a show out of it, but like it could be even like 4 or 5 years from now, someone's still resonating with your work and they have an opportunity to have an exhibition and they'll bring you into it. So networking is good. Be polite, be kind, be respectful, be reciprocal. And I already talked about this a little bit, but I have the tabs open, so I'll just talk about it really quick. I also think it's important to follow things that have nothing to do with you, but you're interested in. So these are two that I follow. Terrain Exhibitions is a curatorial project that started out in, I think, the Midwest, maybe Chicago. I might be wrong. Somewhere in the Midwest. And they take over public space to do art programming. In a really interesting way that I feel like is much different than a lot of the public art work that is happening in Philly. And I follow them as basically just inspiration for my own practice of how we can be transformative in our practice, and how we think about what art is and how it moves in the world and functions. And then another project that I love is called Solitary Gardens. So this is a curatorial project. I don't even want to say curatorial project. This is a project. It's a community project started by abolitionists who were connected to a man who's incarcerated without parole down, I think, in New Orleans. And he really missed gardening and he was in solitary confinement. So they planted a garden in his memory that they wrote him letters about and like caretaked for him. And now they have been doing this project since he passed away for other people who are incarcerated, who are locked up in solitary confinement, to have them have a connection to the outside world again, but also for other people to see those gardens and be able to connect back to these people that essentially can't connect with us, to like find senses of community and like support when like a lot of people who are incarcerated, if they don't have family, get lost and left behind by the rest of us. So this is also very, I don't know if inspirational is the right word, but I think more work like this should be happening, and I follow it to keep my own brain focused on this type of work and how we can bring that into our spaces. So I think you should think about those things. And one of the other things I wanted to quickly say is this has nothing to do with applying to opportunities, but I think it's important to be professional, because this is something I did like 2 or 3 years out of undergrad, that I applied to a show. And I used to make sculptures that didn't have like a formed structure, that I was just like, hang it however you want, and just included nails. And I did that for this show. And this is what it was supposed to be, which is very white. And when I saw the installed photo, I was like, why does it look so weird? And it's because they installed it with the front facing the brick and the back actually out. So it was just all of the like gooey embroidery shit that you're not supposed to see. And then it came back with brick stains all over it on the front, which is fine because all my art is trash. It's fine. But I did anything old. It taught me that you can't give creative freedom to curators without some guidance, unless you want to maybe have your work damaged. So now every time I apply to anything and I get in and I have to ship it to them, or even if I'm like, I used to drive Bryant, our old gallery director, insane because I would bring everything in wrapped like in a picnic blanket of fabric that I found in my studio, just crumbled up and be like, here you go, just hang it. So now I am less careful than anyone should be, but I actually include a photo of how things are supposed to be hung and include the hardware to do it and try to be courteous because now I'm on the other end of it. And when people just hand you things without any rhyme or reason of how to hang it, or a painting that doesn't have wire behind it, or a piece of wood that has no way of hanging it, but you want it on the wall, those types of things are really annoying. And the reason I wanted to talk about this, not only so you don't damage your own work like I did, is because we have had artists before that are very unprofessional, that we stopped working with because their work kept getting damaged and we can't afford to pay them out because they're hanging things wrong in the first place. So that will become a detriment to your practice over time because also all of us talk to each other. So places that also run residency programs have warned us before of people who've applied to ours. Or like sometimes we have a really difficult artist and other people will be like, oh yeah, I should have warned you. And you don't want to be that person, and I don't want to be that person. And I will say that we don't talk shit as much as we could. Unless you're really mean, and then we will. And I'm open about that. You should be nice to everyone, unless they deserve it. So anyway, be nice and professional and clean with your work and hang it properly. And then the last thing I'll say is keep, just like I was saying with the Instagrams that I followed, like terrain and solitary gardens, be transformative in what your practice could look like. Like just like how I started the presentation earlier, being like, I am a weaver and that's all I want to do. I'm just going to work retail and make art and like show my work in craft shows and like fiber spaces. That's not what I do. And part of the reason why I don't do that anymore is because I started finding open calls that were doing different things that I was intrigued by. So like this was like a solo show that I had in a mini gallery where someone like built a box in their studio and they had an open call out to artists that were like, just fill it. This is a professional gallery that just happens to be like 2x2. So I did like one piece that fit perfectly into that like gallery space. And I would have probably never worked with the materials that I worked with for that piece if I hadn't gotten in. And that has super transformed my process because I started doing sculpture work out of the same materials that I was using in that I had never known existed up until then. There was an open call that I saw to be a day out of a calendar from like a Russian art collective. So all you had to do was like send them a scan of an art piece, and if you got excluded, then you got to be on this calendar. And I thought that was really fun. This isn't pictured here, but there was another show, I think in the Czech Republic, where you just mailed them like a USB with like video or audio, and it got included into this like digital project within a gallery space where they were like layering all these different sounds from all over the world. In a collection, I think Yale, because there was an open call for a zine show, and then they bought all of the work in the show to include in their collection. I didn't make zines before that. I was just like, oh, that would be cool to be in a show at Yale. And then I started doing like a bunch of drawings during the pandemic because I didn't have access to my studio space for the first month. And then their artist letters of numbers at the time was doing online exhibitions featuring artists who were like drawing and painting at home. That I got included in that like random online show that like if I had just been like, no, I'm not going to make art right now, I wouldn't have been in. And I guess I do paint and draw sometimes, but not really. Anyway, so I think it's good to be open. Kind of summarize. It's like I hate presentations. I hate my voice. So yeah, this is my life. These are all the things. You should make your own database. You should talk to people and be kind to people and have them talk back to you. Be interested in their lives just as much as you want them to be interested in your lives. And also think about how your work relates to other people. I didn't say that earlier, but you should, because it's really cool seeing artists work together after meeting randomly. Is a lot of you have cool things in common. I would make very interesting shows. Yeah, so that's it.
Did you want to take questions?
Oh, sure. Wait, can we turn the light on though? I feel weird.
Yeah. Gotta give you more light.
Oh, that's so fun. Okay. I'm forgetting how technology works so fast. Okay. Did anyone have questions? I covered a lot. Lucy.
Are there any online exhibitions? Like, what do you feel is the difference between an online exhibition that's like scammy and one that is actually worth being in?
I have mixed feelings about this. I think there was one I was looking at the other day that I think was only like a $20 application fee or something, and they have like 25,000 followers. So I was like, oh, maybe this is less scammy. But then I looked at their engagement and they were only getting like 2 likes on things, and I was like, oh, they bought. So I would say in spaces that you already, most of the time, if it's a digital show for a space that also is a physical space, those are not a scam, and I think it's worth it, and it's getting your work in front of curators that might not see it otherwise. I think a lot of New York galleries that really only represent a lot of other New Yorkers, that's a good way of getting your work in front of people like that. I used to be a collective member of Paradise Palace in Brooklyn, and like they switched over from having an in-person gallery to having a digital gallery. So that felt good to me. I mean, I didn't have to apply for that because I was already a member, but they have a similar member structure to us. But yeah, I didn't feel like I wasn't getting the same amount of like audience views as I did when I had like the physical gallery space, because they had limited hours anyway. So a lot of people were looking at it online. Yeah, I think when people only have digital like shows, unless they like really work hard to make them significant, places that really interview artists and try to like promote them, I think are worth it. Sorry, was that like too all over the place? Or was that helpful? Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
Can you put your slide up of the internet once again?
Yeah. Oh, and I have a handout too that I've been holding this entire time that I'm giving to you. So I wanted to give you all your own resource beginning. So if you don't already have a database, so these are some of my favorite ones, or ones that I think would be relevant to a wider group of people. I also included in this time, if you got this in a previous Creative Conversations, because I did give this out in 2023, it has been updated with new stuff. Old stuff has been removed, that doesn't exist anymore. And also I added a book list that mostly is just stuff I really like, that doesn't necessarily have to do with researching opportunities or being an artist. It just works for me. Like one of the books that I'm specifically talking about is called Terror. And it's a disability justice book. And it has been really transformative to me about how I think about creating space. So like I never knew before reading that book that there are people who are allergic to all smells. So if you're actually being accessible in how you organize space, you should request for everyone to have unscented everything, like shampoo, body lotion, everything unscented, because otherwise it can trigger like debilitating migraines for people. Had no idea until I read that book. So I put it on there because I think everyone should read it. If you're interested in creating accessible space. But yeah, some of the other books on there, artwork is the one that like every class you ever take will recommend you to buy. I think there is some stuff in there that is not relevant anymore because it's older, but it's still a good baseline for like writing a CV, stuff like that. Beth Pickens wrote a book a couple years ago called Making Your Art No Matter What. The main thing of relevance I found in that book was she's Jewish and she practices Shabbat, and she talked about having your own art practice Shabbat every week. So not focusing on your art practice at all and leaving yourself open to relate, like hanging out with your friends and family and like going out into the world and like just existing and reconnecting with why you are an artist through like the world. That's the second one, Make Your Art No Matter What. Obviously the artist way, it's like, how can you not at least mention it? Cody Cook Parrott goes by, this is their name, their chosen name right now. When you Google this book, it's going to come up with a different name, but that's not their name anymore. So I wanted to point that out. And Art Writing Crisis, I learned a lot of things when I read it. It's a collection of essays. The biggest one is that it validated what I was saying about getting coffee with people, where this editor from Freeze magazine had an essay in it about how his inbox, when he came to work every day, had like 700 press releases from all these shows all around the world in it every morning, and he would just mass delete all of them. But like the people who reached out were just like, hey, you want to chill? That's like who he actually became friends with and had relationships with. So I've been saying that for like 5 years, and then I read that over the winter this year, and I was like, yes, this is like a real deal person saying that. And then Massive Bookshop, I just wanted to mention, it's an anti-capitalist bookstore, an anti-profit bookstore that donates everything back into, I believe, into prison, like incarcerated funds. But they have a really awesome art selection that every time I go to their site, I am constantly surprised by, and I've gotten really cool things there that I never knew existed. So I just wanted other people to know that that bookstore exists. But yeah, otherwise, I think everything is pretty straightforward. Anyone else have questions? Okay, thank you for coming.
Good job, good job.
Thank you.